Faith Works Live is the name of the show and is what we truly believe. My name is Rebecca Haynie, and it is my pleasure to be joined once again by a very busy man. U.S. Senate candidate Jim Carlin is on the line with us. Jim, is it okay if I call you Jim? Because I just did.
Absolutely. Absolutely. No, you're good. You're good.
Representative Carlin, you have so many titles, right? You're a former attorney, you're an Army veteran, you've served in the Iowa State House as a senator, and now you're running for U.S. Senate. So You've just done so much. So I just want to make sure I'm getting all of that in there. It's very full business card.
I'm not that big on titles, honestly. So yeah.
Well, again, I appreciate your time today. We're coming to busy season for anyone running for candidacy for here in the primaries. That's coming up on June 7th here in the state of Iowa. So I just thought right off the top, let's remind people of why you're running, why you're doing this to yourself, and why you're putting yourself through the schedule.
That's actually not a bad way to put it. What it comes down to is this. If you look 10 years down the road with the course that we're on right now, I'm a father and I'm a grandfather, and I'm a very protective grandfather. I don't like the course we've got for our grandchildren. And I believe we have to live in the reality of their future. What does their future look like? And, you got a game for it. If you see there's a rough game ahead for them, you got to prepare for it now. You got to do what you can on the, to preemptively deal things that are very foreseeable, have the self-awareness, take responsibility for what you see, and as best you can, help them now. And I see a lot of passivity, and I don't see a lot of forethought going into their future. And that really, really concerns me, because I think every one of us knows that we're on the wrong course. And the question is, how do we go about righting the ship? How do we go about fixing this thing? And I think there's a lot in that conversation, but it's a challenge I think we all have to take on. We all have to take and shoulder our individual responsibility.
Well, and that brings us up probably to the forefront, or the story on the forefront of most people's minds, which is, of course, the horrible shooting that happened in Uvalde, Texas. And immediately the conversation turns to our leaders. People look and see, who's going to do something, what should have been done maybe here. It's hard to go back. Obviously we can't change that, but what should be done in the future. And so I wanted to give you a chance to describe what you have seen here and your thoughts on this. And obviously the conversation has quickly turned to gun policy. And what do you believe should be the response to situations like this?
Well, the thing is people act out of their identity. All right, so let's start with that. This guy acted out of the identity and image he had of himself. So if we look at root causes, it's not the gun, it's the image that this guy had of himself. What was it about his upbringing? What was it about the media? What was it about his activities, his school, his family relationships that cultivated an image in him that was okay with murdering elementary age children? See, now that's the real issue. We look at the guns, but the issue is the person. And I think we need to really look at where these tendencies come from. I had a bill in the Iowa Senate to look at the impact of technology on early cognitive childhood development. The studies show that by the age of 7, a lot of the neural pathways are set. The ways of thinking, they're set. And so, I also had a bill for, the recommending to moms to breastfeed. And the reason why I did that was the studies have shown that, if a mother breastfeeds her baby for 6 months, their mental health spectrum goes way up. You really have to take a broad-based look at what goes into the psychological makeup of a human being that would do something like this. And, from the time that baby's born, what are we doing to look at mental health. And, there's plenty of stuff out there to give us some very good clues on how we could do things better.
Well, and I think that goes to the heart of one of the main accusations that I've heard, as in personally, it's been levied at me, which is you say you're pro-life, and yet you don't stand for, speaking for myself, you don't stand for all these gun restrictions, and usually they tend not to name one. But I know that you have said in the past that you're against certain gun restrictions, like you're not in favor of red flag laws and things like that. So we can get into some of that in terms of gun policy. But if you hear, and perhaps you have heard that accusation to say, how can you say you're pro-life and yet you don't support this or that gun ban? How do you respond to something like that?
Because here's the thing. I believe in the Second Amendment. I believe in the fundamental right to defend yourself. But the Second Amendment to me is a boundary that says, I'm going to be treated like a person. It's a final boundary, but it's a boundary that says I get to define myself. When I take away somebody's Second Amendment, I've left them powerless. Okay. I've taken away a boundary of their personhood. And when you take away somebody's right to defend themselves, you're kind of saying, I own you. And this is one of the broader issues, again, that I have with this course that we're on. Obamacare, we mandated healthcare. The politicians basically sold people's healthcare to Blue Cross and Blue Shield, United Healthcare. They mandated it. And those companies that were now monopolized, because you had pre-existing, this kind of, I don't want to get in the weeds here, but do you see where that goes? If you mandate pre-existing conditions to be covered, you force out smaller market participation, and you create a monopoly where people have to have health insurance with a couple of companies. And so this idea that you get to have some autonomy over your own life is incrementally being stripped from each of us. The Second Amendment's part of that.
And it can be a last line of defense, clearly, against people who have wicked intentions toward you. And that's something I think is missing from the current debate. I hear a lot about guns, and I hear a lot about mental illness. And certainly no one who does something like the shooting in Texas is mentally well or stable, but there's a moral component. And here on this show, we're upfront about that we understand that there is such a thing as good and evil, that God has defined and created a good world, and evil continually seeks to destroy what God loves. And so I see a lot of that the moral component missing, stunningly so, in our social commentary. It's like we're trying to control all these objects, like we're blaming the gun or blaming, some sort of condition that we can control, when in actuality, we have to look at the situation going on in people's hearts and souls that bring us here.
You're exactly right. Here's, just on what you're saying, you said a mouthful right there.
It happens.
Yeah, well, the way kids are valued has a lot to do with who they become. So if I have this society where children aren't valued and they pick up on that, they're going to believe that. They're going to internalize that. That's going to affect their perspective and the way they in turn value others. And I personally, I think you're right. I think, this is a battle between good and evil. I think this is a spiritual battle. And I think it's folly to believe that politicians have the answers. I think God has the answers. And I think if you spend time alone with him and you look at him and you read your Bible, you're going to get some really good answers from him. He is a wonderful Father. And Jesus is a wonderful Savior. And he will help us if we humble ourselves before him. I think if you stop the slaughter of innocent children, you're going to take away a lot of the authority of evil in this country. If you stop abortion, and that displaces the authority of evil. If you get marriage right, I'm a big believer in marriage. I think kids need two parents. I think they need a mom and a dad. A committed marriage that a child takes in has generational implications. When they see mom and dad love each other and are committed to one another, and they love that child, you are laying a foundation for a very good life. And those are the kind of things that we're going to have to get back into our country to get on the right track.
Seems like we have to rediscover a lot of the basics lately.
We do. And
Yeah.
we've lost the basics. You know what? One of my big issues has been the LGBT agenda, sexualizing, elementary age kids. My secretary had a teacher's aide who was a drag queen. He's a 4-year-old boy. Now, I don't want my
Wow.
4-year-old. I don't want my 4-year-old boy around a drag queen 6, 7, 8 hours a day. I don't hate anybody. Let me just say that. I don't hate anybody. But as a parent, I have a right to define the moral upbringing of my child. And, that is being taken from parents very aggressively. Unfortunately, Senator Grassley supported Merrick Garland, the guy he said wasn't fit to be a Supreme Court justice, but voted for him to be an attorney general. That guy has set parents up to be surveilled and monitored by the FBI anytime they stand up for their kids. That's not a good course, and parents have a legitimate right and voice to define the education of their children.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
there's a whole lot in that mix, whether it's the women's sports or, I wrote a bathroom bill and I took a lot of flack for that. And my response to that is my granddaughter is not sharing a restroom with a man. It's not going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
If there's anything I can do about it, she's a little girl. I can well imagine, how little girls would feel when you put them in that situation. They have legitimate rights to safety and privacy. To you and me, that's basic, right? We get it.
Right.
But, the world is just on this, light speed course to destroy and desecrate any semblance of decency at all. And, that's what we have to be willing to confront that, even, even though they say they hate you and everything else. Okay, you hate me, but I'm still going to stick to my guns and do what I think is right.
And love you enough to tell you the truth and stand for your rights and your protection, even if you're angry at me about it.
Yeah.
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 Well,
I mean,
and-
somebody who loves you is going to tell you the truth, whether you want to hear it or not. That's, I mean, that's how you know when you have a real friend. A real friend will tell you the truth and set you straight.
Yeah, very true. And you mentioned
Yeah.
a couple of things. Like, I think the parental rights in education and parental protection of children against the aggressive sexualizing of children is probably the sleeper issue in this election year. I don't know that those who are on that side are expecting the backlash that's coming. But I believe it's going to be a defining issue. That, and also probably before the horrible events in Texas, the biggest news was the leaked Supreme Court decision reversing Roe v. Wade. And so that's definitely going to play a part in things. And I wanted to get your take on that here in just the next couple of minutes. You're someone who is pro-life. You're former attorney. And so I just wondered what your thoughts are. And, if this opinion stands, what kind of federal response there might be. Since you're running for a federal office, obviously this would turn things back to the states. But what, if any, do you believe the federal government's role might be in a post-Roe world?
Boy, that there's a lot to that question. If the states get to define life individually on a state basis, honestly, I don't know. Here's what I do know. I know that the left will introduce challenges and do everything they possibly can to make that difficult to implement. Here in Iowa, I think Iowans are predominantly pro-life. I was able to get a heartbeat bill done with 3 Senate colleagues, Rick Bertrand, Jake Chapman, and Brad Zahn. And we got the heartbeat bill done by saying, we're not going to give you a budget unless you give us a heartbeat bill. And that actually worked. You have to be willing to not be liked, to be assertive. It's not a nicey game. You can't be everybody's buddy. And unfortunately, a lot of people of faith want to, be, and I don't think
Nicer
God.
than God.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I'll tell you who God's not friends with. He's not friends with the devil. And right, he's not friends with evil either. And I'm all about loving people, but sometimes to do the right thing, you have to be a little forceful. I know in Iowa, our governor is going to move the ball on life with the legislature. We passed the heartbeat bill. We had a Supreme Court justice who said that women have a constitutional fundamental right to an abortion. We're going to have to set that aside with a life amendment next year. And once the life amendment's in place, then and Iowans will vote on that, then we can pass meaningful pro-life legislation. Mm-hmm. But as far as like the federal role in making sure that states have that option in that course, we better elect a conservative president in the next election with a conservative attorney general to do what's necessary to enforce the law in the United States in that regard.
Mm-hmm. I know last time we talked, it's been quite a while. It was back when you announced your candidacy, and you were on the show at that time. And we had some conversations about the direction for pro-life and where you stand on that. And I just wanted to circle back to that, Jen Psaki, and and see if your thoughts are still the same on some of those thoughts, particularly about exceptions that came up. Mm-hmm. And it felt like we ran out of time that last time. So I don't want us to run out of time again before giving you an opportunity to talk about your position on that.
Sure. Well, when you say exceptions, are you talking about rape and incest?
Yes, specifically, yes. Thanks for clarifying. Right. Usually the exceptions you hear about are things like rape, incest, and life of the mother. Usually, that's part of the lingo around abortion legislation.
Right. Well, I actually, and I can't help that it sounds political. It's not. I have changed my mind about that. The reality is the rape and incest things are to the utmost profoundly unfair. I don't know that I would buy into a rape and incest exemption because there is another life to consider. And there is another life to consider. I actually had lunch with a woman. It was a good friend of mine. I don't know if she'd be comfortable with me sharing her name. She was raped. She delivered a baby. It was her daughter now. She's very thankful she has that daughter. So, and that wasn't the only reason I have changed my mind on it, because there's another life to consider, and it's horrible. It's unfair. I had a client who was literally raped in the parking lot of a bar and had been drugged and lapsed in and out of consciousness during it. And it's horrible and it's terrible. And I don't know that a law is the best way to do that. I think you have to win the heart of that woman over to see the reality of that life within her. But my inclination right now would be I would probably oppose exemptions, but how that is meted out, or what that would look like, I think you have to give the utmost in consideration and empathy to the woman who's been subjected to that in a very real way. And it's a very, very tough, very profoundly unfair issue. It's something that could well mark that woman's life. That kind of trauma is terrible.
Mm-hmm. Most definitely is. And that's one of the reasons actually that I stand against those types of exceptions, similar to what you were saying. I believe that women deserve so much better. They don't deserve to be further victimized by violence of abortion after she's already been the victim of a violent and unjust crime against her body. We shouldn't commit a crime against her body or against the child's life as well. And I don't think that we should punish children for the crimes of their father. Standing in that way, that's how I see it.
I don't. Well, kind of like what you're saying, I don't think you fix it. I don't think you fix it by taking the life of that child. I
Sure.
don't think that's the way to do it.
Mhm.
And, but like I said, you need to put a lot of thought into what that mother needs, and
Mhm.
kind of figure that out. But I'm inclined to agree with you. And I've actually spent a lot of time thinking about this particular issue. But the bottom line is, there's another human being, there's another life to consider.
Mhm.
And that
Well,
life didn't have any choice.
I know these are tough and emotional issues, but you're the guy that takes
Sure.
stands on tough issues. So when we're talking about things like, I mean, that's the nature of this. We're fighting for the very survival of humankind in all of these, whether it comes, from destruction like the school shootings, or from the destruction of abortion. The disregard for our own disregard for reality, I think, has put us in a position where we're
Mhm.
fighting on this basic moral level. It is an existential fight, and we need people who are going to be very strong leaders to step into that. As you're on the campaign trail, you're hearing from Iowans. What is their level of, I guess, investment in the coming election? What kind of sense are you getting? Because to me, this is a make or break kind of time. This really matters.
Right.
And there's a lot of people I'm hearing from that, maybe got a little bit they were kind of apathetic maybe before, and now they're getting invested. And lots of times they feel kind of angry at what the left is and has been doing to the country. But I just wondered what kind of response you're getting as you go on the campaign trail.
The grassroots engagement that my campaign is getting is energized. It's enthusiastic. They're going to show up on game day, and we're, I know I'm going up against an institution. I don't have any illusions about that, but we're gonna get to the other side of the thing with a W for that very reason. And the people that care about this country, that care about freedom, that care about life, that care about the indoctrination of kids in our public schools, they're going to show up. The parents who care about protecting the innocence of their children, they're going to show up. They're going to align themselves with us because they know that we mean what we say, and we follow up on what we say, and we do what we say. And we're not going to campaign on one thing and do another. That's not going to happen. And when you look at the weightiness of the things you just cited, I don't think we can do any less. This is, there's so much at stake. And when we talk about what's at stake, you alluded to this. It's the way a human being is valued and defined and respected, and their right, their fundamental right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness is the charge and responsibility of government to protect and not take away. And unfortunately, the left is taking those things away from us right under our nose. And you got to call them on it, and you have to confront them. And tyranny, our responsibility is expose them for what they are and stand up to them. And if necessary, you got to fight them.
Mm-hmm.
Not talking about armed militias, but I am talking about really fighting them. You don't have to take on the whole thing, Rebecca, but you do have to find the battle that you can fight and think about and work on and get after and shoulder and take responsibility. Find your role in this thing, and don't let all the fear of all the monolithic aspect to it intimidate you.
That's true. And I can see the Iowa state flag in my mind, and the motto, our liberties we prize, our rights we will maintain.
We will maintain.
And I've always loved that, and I increasingly value it more and more. I just need t-shirts with that with that phrase across it, because that has to be our battle cry. I mean, maybe it's a
Yeah.
lot of syllables for a battle cry, but still, I think that
Sure.
has to be where our minds are, where our dedication is.
Yeah.
And this world is not our home, true, but while we're here in Iowa, it's our responsibility to stand up, to call good what
It
God
is.
calls good and protect that, and to be unashamed and bold enough to call out evil when it
Right.
tries to attack us, and say no, no farther. You, not here and not now. Our liberties we prize and our rights we will maintain. And so I'm really grateful to see you standing up for that in a difficult race, which you acknowledge, but somebody has to stand up. And Jim
That's
Carlin,
right.
you are that guy, and we really love you for it. Thank you so much for joining the show. I know you're a very busy guy. Jim Carlin, candidate for U.S. Senate here in the fine state of Iowa. Primaries are June 7th. And that's something that I think every person that's listening right now should be engaged, in particular on the primary level. Firm advocate of that. God bless you, Jim. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot for having me. And everybody, tell your friends and family to be sure to vote on June 7th. We need every single one of you guys.
That's true. I've always thought that's kind of the real election day, is primary time.
It is. Well, right now it is. You're absolutely right.
Jim Carlin. Find out more about him at carlinforusssenate.com. That's right, carlinforusssenate.com.
You
Thanks,
got it.
Jim.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate the opportunity.
Absolutely.
Hey, God bless you.
Anytime.
Yep. Bye-bye.
Bye.